Stress that's not treated or addressed can lead to many health problems.
We have known for in several disease conditions and disorders, stress makes things worse, makes symptoms worse.
Dr. Carla Udy is an associate professor of psychiatry at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. She's focused on stress and the development of Alzheimer's disease. Studies show that women are twice as likely as men to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Over the last probably 5 or 6 years, the realization that Alzheimer's disease was more prevalent in females, even when you correct for the fact that females live longer.
So, is it possible that stress could be one of the reasons why?
The Alzheimer's Association had put out a request for applications to look at the underlying causes for this. So why were women getting Alzheimer's disease or being diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease more than men?
To find out, Dr. Udy collaborated with Dr. John Cerrito and his lab. Cerrito is a professor of neurology at Washington University School of Medicine. The research team examined levels of amyloid beta in the brains of mice. It's referred to as A beta, a key Alzheimer's protein.
And A beta is believed to be the initiating factor of Alzheimer's. In the progression of Alzheimer's disease, it starts to aggregate and forms clumps. And that builds up as what's called plaques in an Alzheimer's brain. And that can start 15 to 20 years before the first symptoms of Alzheimer's even begins.
But how does stress relate to the development of amyloid plaques in the brain?
About 15 years ago, we were looking at the effects of stress specifically on A beta pathology in an Alzheimer's disease mouse model, and found that stress did in fact make the Alzheimer's plaques, the A beta plaques that develop in the brain, worse in this model. We didn't look at the difference between males and females.
So they took a deeper dive into their previous research.
We went back to our stress studies to look at the differences between males and females in that specific model. And we actually found that females were much more likely to, female mice, when they're stressed, have a much greater increase in A beta that lasts a lot longer than the response that we would see in male mice. In male mice, we saw almost no response at all. Some mice did respond, so it's not 100%. All females, all males do not respond, but it was a lot more striking in female mice than in males.
Further experiments revealed that the difference comes down to a cellular stress response pathway in brain cells.
There's a fundamental signaling difference between males and females, even though the males did show that they were stressed. If you look at corticosterone, cortisol levels in the plasma, males and females have the exact same stress response. So males do feel the stressor, but their brains just aren't reacting the same way to that stress as females do. A lot of this is driven by what's called the corticotropin releasing factor. Both males and females have it. They both express a receptor for this protein. But in females, the receptor's on the cell surface, and you get activated, you get this change in the cells that increase A beta levels. In males, the receptor's not on the cell surface. So you actually don't get signaling where you get very little signaling in males through this pathway. This is a fundamental biological difference between the two, and we don't know why that's the case. And there's been great studies done by other groups showing that this difference occurs, and we show it again in our study as well. And we don't understand why that is. Is it linked to the Y chromosome? Is it hormonal, which is very likely? Is there something else that's driving that? We just don't know.
More studies are needed to see if stress and anxiety treatments could prevent or treat the development or progression of Alzheimer's disease.
Effects of that stress using medicines, is that beneficial? Can you prevent this change in amyloid levels? There are also other things that go on in the brain besides just amyloid. There's a protein called tau that builds up in Alzheimer's disease. We have some data to suggest that stress affects tau as well. So those are follow-up studies. And then what else is going on in the brain? Inflammation would be another good factor and things to look at.